there are some do not pass go, do not collect $200, like if you're going to worry about the performance of your application without like at least checking these two things, right? Which is one, are you running in production mode? Right? And so React, when you do like, local server, is in development mode. And it does things like give you console logs and yell at you about things. And like say, hey, you're doing this wrong. And like put extra things in the React Dev Tools, which is what we're going to look at, and a whole slew of things like that. Again, doing stuff takes more time than not doing stuff, right? So do not be the person who like pulls down your coworker's branch after this course, pulls it up in development, opens up the tools like, did you see you have like a 60 millisecond response time? It should be 16, because it might not actually be like that in the real app, and then you're going to have to make new friends. So definitely, and the easiest way to tell if your React application is running production mode is if you have the developer tools installed, and it's not, you'll see an angry red like React icon, which is what you want to see in development, right? Because you're in development mode in development. But if you go to like whatever your company is .com and you see that, it's time to tweak Webpack configs and make that not happen, right? If you use something like Create React App, you should get it for free. If you use most of the boilerplates, you should get it for free. I have been bitten by this because like we had the like bespoke Webpack configuration that someone built in 2017, and every upgrade, things happen, right? So it's definitely worth checking that. And like the remedy for that is you just set the Webpack environment to production, right? And whatever it is, it could be whatever got you accidentally in that case is going to be different for everyone, but the solution is roughly the same. Fix it. And then the other one, which you have gotten yelled at in your console when you've forgotten them, because I've gotten yelled at it, and I don't think the dev tools just yell at me, which is if you're iterating over like a list and you're mapping over a list of items to render them, and you don't give each one a key, you'll get yelled at. If you give it something like the index, and we'll talk about why when we get to like a later slide, it's so that React can keep track of which one is which if they get resorted or one gets removed. If you don't use keys while you're mapping over, or use keys don't mean anything, like the index of the array, which is literally going to shift every time the array shifts, that is, the immediate gotcha. That is like, there's not a lot to say other than listen to the warning message in your console, right, and do the thing. Those are the two easy ones that will kind of get out of the way. And those have, they don't have those trade-offs of like, if you memoize it, like you could accidentally make it slower because the active memoize. No, these are big wins. There's no downside, just do them, right? They work. The other thing, if you do not already have it, is to go get yourself the React developer tools. They are available for at least every Chromium-based browser and Firefox. I don't know if they are available for Safari. Even like, it turns out I learned that you can go to the Chrome store in Edge and install the Chrome plugin in Edge, and it works. So if you type in React Developer Tools, you will find those. And we can take a look at those kind of for a second, just to see how they work and get a sense of them, because I will send you on vision quests with those in a little bit. So if you have them installed, like one, you can choose whether or not you want to see this. I have done this mostly for show. On a normal day, I do like the hide from toolbar. I don't need to see an angry orange React icon as I'm developing, but I'm here for you today. So we've got that, and then what it does is it adds 2 extra tabs to your developer tools. There's Profiler, and there is Components. Components basically gives you a component tree, which is useful, especially because it'll give you the key. It'll let you see what is being passed, all the state. You can actually tweak the state in a component. It is very good for developing. It is not necessarily super relevant for diagnosing and triaging performance issues, but it's you get them both together. So okay. The one that is of more concern to us today is Profiler, and Profiler kind of works like the Performance tab does in Chrome or Edge or what have you. And the kind of best way to do it is to, when you're ready, you can kind of hit this record button and do things, right? Like remove a user, remove a post, add a thing, so on and so forth, right? And you can like make some things move around. And then usually, can you go spelunking for performance problems? Absolutely, but it's tricky, right? Like just because React is rendering doesn't necessarily mean that it's problematic, right? You should take advantage of the fact that like I have a ridiculous laptop, right? And we'll talk a little bit in 1 second about how to simulate a less ridiculous laptop, right? Like, but like also understanding that like the act of it rendering does not necessarily mean that you have a performance problem. But you can kind of see this shows you basically everything that rendered, and this is kind of each interaction, right? So this is like whatever the first thing that I did was. You can kind of see like this is all of the rendering process. We'll talk about what that process is and what these words mean in like a slide or two, but it kind of shows you. And the really interesting part is that not only will it show you like the given components, you hover over it, like what its parent was, you can kind of see all the different interactions that you did. But if you click on one of them, like on this one, you can kind of see why did this render, right? And start to like trace back what the cause of it was. If something was rendering that you didn't think should have rendered, so for instance, I know one here, so I'll hit remove, I'll hit record, I'll hit remove on a user, right? And so that triggers like almost everything, right? And so like there are questions of like, did an individual post need to post comment, right? Like which one of these really truly needed to? And I can kind of figure out why did you re-render. Like there are, obviously this is an example out with known performance issues, right? Or known rendering issues at least. And you can kind of like get a sense for what it was, but like it's very interesting that once you know you have a real problem, you should always start with a problem. If you just go surreptitiously optimizing your application, 1, you might be wasting your time. 2, you might be causing more problems than you have, right? It usually starts with either my favorite bug report ever, which is it is slow, right? Which is both like, it's also like a question I asked a lot during interviews was like, tell me your thought process around that, because it's one that happens, right? It's a way to start figuring it out. Or even when you're developing a feature, as you're in the middle of coding, you might notice it. So it's always important to start with a problem and then try to solve it rather than go looking for problems. I believe Rob Pike, one of the creators of the Go programming language, I believe the quote is something like, measure first before you optimize performance, and then even then measure again, right, to make sure, right? Like, and that holds true, right? Yes, we have simple apps, but that does not give you a license to go and just find problems, right? Once you know you have a problem, the easiest one, the one where you know quickly is when you are typing in an input field and like the keys are not showing up in the input field as you are typing and they show up all at once. Like that is for me the most classic one where I'm like, I have a problem here, right? Or when the browser truly locks up, right? Those are the issues of when it's time to like pull out the tools and like jump in. But these tools are available and they're here and they give you the ability to kind of like begin to like dig in and look. And they're actually incredibly powerful and useful. The other thing that you will notice if you look very closely at my screen, and this I use this when I know that I have a problem, right? What I actually use personally, this is just me, subjective opinion, a lot is, if you see when I hit remove, see those green boxes flashing everywhere, right? Those are everything that's re-rendering, right? And so a lot of times, and those will happen, I believe there's a setting actually. You can go into the tools here, record why each component rendered. You got general, highlight updates when components render. I would definitely go turn that on. And then whenever your developer tools are open, and not when they're not open, which is both good for your general web browsing, but also you will think you have the most performant app in your world for a second until you realize you close the developer tools. That will happen to you at least once. Super useful for like just as you're working, like yo, everything is flashing green. Like, again, we're not seeking to solve problems before they exist. We're also not seeking to like ignore our act of creating a problem at the same time, right? Especially if it is one of the no-cost performance remedies. Like for instance, we saw keys, production mode, and the one that we'll talk about in a second is either state management or component hierarchy. Those are zero downside optimizations, while memoization, some of the other ones, have some cost to them. And sometimes you always have to think about, like, even the zero cost and performance ones, do they have complexity cost? Because if they have complexity cost, then also it's like, yeah, the code is like a microsecond faster now, and it takes me 10 more extra minutes for a new person looking at this component to read it. I don't know that you made the best trade-off. So we'll kind of talk about and think about those things as we go through. The other thing that I want to point out here is just in the regular tools under performance. One thing that React will do once you have the tools installed, if you're running in development mode, is in the regular tools, it will use the user timing API to at least start to annotate some of the different. This one doesn't have particularly slow JavaScript in it, like some of the other ones do, but it will tell you what component was rendering and stuff along those lines, while it won't do that in production. So you get a little bit more extra information. But the more interesting part, because like I usually use the other one, is if you are on a incredibly fancy MacBook Pro like I am, with like more RAM than I thought they could put in a computer, you can go ahead and hit this little thing here, which is to either throttle your network or throttle your CPU, right? And a lot of times, especially depending on what you're working on, incredibly useful, because what might seem fast like on your computer might not work on like the average like person's computer on coffee shop Wi-Fi, right? And so getting a sense for both of these things of like on a slow network connection and with a throttled CPU, right, I think is a good use of kind of having empathy for your customers. Particularly, I personally work on a bunch of developer tooling, right? So like I can make a few assumptions about the computers that my customers are using, but like prior to that, I worked on a consumer product, right? Very different demographics, and like also it's tricky because like while my current customers have faster computers, they will also shame me for performance a lot faster as well. So like the bar is higher. I just don't necessarily need to throttle my computer as much. But they will show up in my GitHub issues. So awesome. So those are the developer tools, and they're super useful, and we will use them throughout the day to figure out why stuff is re-rendering.